Before we get to that, we want to talk tonight about one of the issues that arose during the Wentworth by-election, which was the whole notion of Australia moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Should Australia do this? What are the implications? And we've got tonight a very distinguished guest, Dr. Colin Rubenstein, the head of the Australian-Israel Jewish Affairs Council, one of the most important spokespeople, I think, for Israeli community, the Jewish community within Australia, and known worldwide. And we're very honoured to have him here tonight.
We are, Michael, and we should also say that next week we'll be getting a representative from the Palestinian community to come in and put their perspective on this debate. So, Colin, what is at the heart of this issue? What is the debate about? Take us through it simply.
Well, very simply, it's about coming to terms with the reality that Jerusalem, certainly West Jerusalem, is the actual capital of the State of Israel, and it has been since 1950. It's about time that the international community recognise that. That's where its parliament is, that's where its federal bureaucracy is, that's where foreign dignitaries, ambassadors go to meet with the Israeli ministers and the Israeli government. And it's really past time that the international community came to terms with that. In fact, it's not all that novel. The truth of the matter is that in the 60s and 70s, there were 21 countries that actually had their embassy in Jerusalem already. And it was really only under the pressure of the Arab boycott after the 1973 war that countries started to withdraw their embassy from Jerusalem and relocate in Tel Aviv. What we've seen in recent times, of course, is that the United States, going back to 1995, has said this is ridiculous, this is anomalous. You have to recognise the reality. Why should Israel be the only country in the world that can't nominate its own capital? And why shouldn't embassies be located there, including our own? So Congress passed an act in 1995, bipartisan, that's what the United States should do. Subsequent presidents, Clinton, George W. Bush, even Obama for a fleeting moment, agreed. And so when Donald Trump did that this year, he promised to do it, to correct that historical anomaly. He did it. And the fact of the matter is he's done it, I think, for the very important reason to try and inject a dose of reality into what most of the international community wants, which is for Israel and the Palestinians to move towards a two-state outcome.
So, Colin, before we get to the issue of moving the embassy to Jerusalem, answer me this question. Does the Australian government recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel?
Well, in reality, they tend to, but in fact, they don't. And that's what a large part of the current debate is about, for Australia to unequivocally say that West Jerusalem is the capital of the State of Israel. And, of course, if they did that, the consequent step is, therefore, to consider moving our embassy, currently located in Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem.
So let's be very clear about this, because this is a profoundly important point in this whole debate. Senior members of the government, federal government, have said to me today, well, we think we've made that point. But you're saying from your standpoint, given your authority and leadership in the group, you don't believe it's definitive that this government or any Australian government has said that we recognise as government policy that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel.
No, I mean, the contradiction is that in fact, many politicians, I think we have, but in reality, legally, it's time that this equivocation was cleared up, and we unequivocally said that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And, of course, I hasten to point out that in saying that, you do nothing to undermine the prospects of a Palestinian state and recognition of a Palestinian capital in the environs of Jerusalem as well. So people who say the opposite, of course, are misreading the situation.
Now, Colin, you very specifically draw a line when you say West Jerusalem. What does that mean is your interpretation of East Jerusalem? Is that the capital of the Palestinian state, ultimately? Well, how do you define that? Because you've been very careful in how you've described West Jerusalem. What is your definition of East Jerusalem?
Well, I mean, the point is between 1948 and 1967, Jerusalem was divided as a result of the 1948 war, when 6 Arab armies invaded and tried to destroy the Jewish state. The outcome of the war was that division. So nobody actually would doubt that that western part of the city from 48 to 67 was sovereign Israeli territory. It's the place where Israel nominated its capital and has its institutions. And as I said before, many countries, in fact almost half of all countries that had embassies in Israel, had their embassy located in West Jerusalem. 45%. There were 47 embassies at that time. 21 of them were based in Jerusalem. So the idea that the Americans have done, President Trump done something entirely novel, I mean, that's just historically incorrect. And the idea that somehow this is a taboo, you can't touch it, is nonsense.
So, Colin, but East Jerusalem, sorry, I was just going to press this. East Jerusalem, how do you describe East Jerusalem?
Well, East Jerusalem, of course, is the territory that was on the other side of the border between 48 and 67. But the point is there have been a number of peace plans, as you very well know, 3 peace plans put forward by the Israelis, all of which the Palestinians have rejected. And each of those peace plans, of course, there's been a presence and the possibility of a Palestinian capital in Jerusalem. And as President Trump said when he announced the movement of the American embassy earlier this year, the final boundaries of that Jerusalem capital is up to the 2 parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, to determine. And what everybody understands is if we ever got to that state of affairs, the Palestinian capital would be in an area of East Jerusalem and its environs that the 2 parties would agree upon.
So the world's been waiting for this 2-state solution, which is why there's been international stalemate in relation to the moving of the embassies and the final declaration that West Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. We're waiting for this 2-state settlement. Now, this has been going on for decade, effectively since 67.
25 years since
Bill Clinton's biography is extraordinary on this. Clinton goes through in very great detail the negotiations he had with Arafat and Barak in late 2000 and in the dying days of his presidency in early 2001. Clinton came in at the second round of discussions after the July discussions in 2000, didn't reach a resolution. He said, you know, this is what I'm putting on the table, this is what should be accepted, this is what I'm going to sign off, including giving the Temple Mount to sovereignty over that to the Palestinians, which was an extraordinary thing for Clinton to say. But Israel said, we'll accept that. Clinton said, I was surprised by what Israel was prepared to do for peace. He said he rang other Arab leaders. They said, wow, Arafat should accept this. And in the end, Arafat did not. And Clinton concluded perhaps Arafat, simply couldn't make the jump from revolutionary to statesman. And Clinton has said on occasion since he never believed in the end that Arafat actually wanted peace. Now, the question therefore is, if Arafat couldn't accept that peace, what likelihood is there ever in the foreseeable future of there being a peace, given Hamas and Fatah?
Well, you're quite right. This is the stalemate that we're in. There is an impasse, and people need to understand that that impasse is brought about by the refusal of the Palestinians to say yes. Yeah. They've been made 3 generous offers of a state with a capital, which seem to meet all the reasonable expectations the Palestinians could want, and they've said no. And since 2014, President Abbas has a deliberate policy of not negotiating. This is the situation we're in. This is the impasse. So it's addressing this recalcitrance, this refusal to engage in negotiations, which is their policy, but instead going around the world calling for unilateral, symbolic gestures and resolutions against condemning Israel, which is getting nowhere. And I think it's very important to say that that's what President Trump did in not only recognising Jerusalem, but he's trying to change the narrative to bring the Palestinians to terms with the reality by doing a number of other things as well.
Thank you, Colin. I really enjoyed that discussion and that explanation. And that was Dr. Colin Rubenstein, the Executive Director of the Australian Jewish Affairs Council.